want to welcome everybody today to this week's recording of MSP Business School. We're doing a roundtable this week, and it's going to be focused on basically what's old is new. One of the things that we don't talk about quite as much on MSP Business School is one of the things that's really right in Brian Doyle's wheelhouse, and that's talking about just the account management side in areas that can be improved. So one of the things, that Robb and I learned when we first joined into the industry is there was a lot of consulting dollars that were on the table, right? Robb and I kind of got into the space when people were still in break fix and they were still focused very heavily on projects. And then people kind of got away from that, and they really started focusing in some ways too much on MRR. And now we're seeing this weird shift now where it kind of it's starting to self-correct back. So now we're trying to find that balance as an MSP community of how much consulting should we be doing right now, and what should that percentage of MRR versus NRR be? And with that, I think I should probably introduce our co-hosts, and maybe we should do that first.
Sorry, we figured we'd get in about minute number 5, right?
Yeah, we'll get there.
Hey, by the way, besides me, it's Robb and Bry.
Yeah.
I didn't realize this was a 3-way call, fellas.
Yeah. So, but with that, I want to welcome both of you, and I kind of want to open the floor to. Brian, I'm sure you've got more ideas on this than we do, but kind of open the floor to what you're seeing and what we can do to as the MSP community to get some more money in the door here.
Yeah, you kind of hit on it, Tim, right? What's old often becomes new again, right? If I look at the fashion trends my daughters are wearing, there's definitely a 70s retro vibe that's come back into the scene, right? Yeah. And, when you look at IT and you look at where some of us cut our teeth, it was all about selling projects, selling consulting, and selling boxes, because back then, we were seeing some strong margin. But the real key was it was all about consulting and projects. It was really helping guide and Sherpa the customer to the solutions they needed in order to do whatever they wanted to do within their business. And that was really the only way we had to make money in the late 1990s, early 2000s. And then we had that shift to, a recurring revenue model, right? Everybody said, let's jump on the managed services bandwagon. Absolutely agree with it. Certainly, that's why we're all here today. And that recurring revenue certainly makes much more stable cultures and businesses for the long term. But the negative is we kind of, you've heard the old saying, why buy the cow if the milk's for free, right? And we really started getting into this mode of giving away a lot of our consultative services to get the holy grail of MRR.
Yeah.
And, while I totally get it, sometimes you got to give away some things. We've gotten, I think, a little bit too accustomed to giving away the farm on the way to getting recurring revenue. And I think we're stepping past some future opportunities. And
Brian, so my question, Brian, is why is everybody feeling like they're giving away the house now? Shouldn't you just do whatever you have to do to protect that MRR? And isn't that the goal?
Well, look, there's always the goal of protecting the MRR, right? And there's always the secondary goal, which is bringing value to the customer. But value comes in a lot of different formats, right? So one of the biggest challenges was when the technology business reviews, QBRs, SBRs, whatever you want to call them, came on the scene. Many people started including those as value-added drivers within their contracts, right? And they would say, hey, look, we're going to do this quarterly business review. And that's how we're going to approach, account management with you in your environment. The problem is, though, we started going past the QBR and really getting into strategic direction. Now, stepping back on that, what is a vCIO in a QBR setting supposed to do? They're supposed to bridge the gap between operational, guidance and leadership, and certainly bring opportunity to bear. But then there's the execution side of it, right? So we can tell, I could tell you guys, hey guys, OSR needs to implement a cybersecurity, hierarchy within your system. You got to build an organization so somebody's in charge. So should a breach happen, everybody understands their roles in the incident. But we also want to make sure that we've got proper safeguards in place to get this done. Now, from an operational side, we're going to monitor those systems, and we can add some new tools to our stack to better secure you. But there I'm providing leadership, right? I'm giving you a plan. I'm telling you where we have to go, and we can put our tools there underneath it. But then there's the execution side. Hey, Brian, we need you actually to come in here and help OSR implement that stuff. We need you to help us construct those policies that all MSPs are kind of giving away because their attitude is, well, I just give them a templatized format of the policy. Tell them to go work with their lawyers. Well, that's great and that's cool. And hey, if you want to do that, go for it. But I think you've got an opportunity to help shape that policy first for a fee before it goes to the lawyers. And maybe take your $200 fee and put 4 hours in there and save 4 hours of the lawyer's $400 fee on this project and help them get a better cost in developing a document. And that's just one example, right? But really, it's become a very blurry line where leadership starts and execution starts. And that concept of protecting the MRR and really trying to drive value, these are the things that can start eating you out of house and home when you look at your service contracts. It's not the direct ticket time sometimes, it's the soft skills. It's the amount of senior team leadership that these customers tap from you. Now, before we go kind of deeper into maybe how you could structure some things, I want to replay some numbers that Jay McBain shared with us when he was talking about kind of the future of the MSP. You know, the world economy is about 86 billion, right? And 3.5 billion, which accounts for about 5% of the total dollars being spent globally today, goes through the IT and telco channels, right? And that's expected to double over the next decade to 7 billion, right? So, you know, we're all sitting here going, great, that means more money, more money, more money, right? But then Jay really explained in that session, today, 64% of that money goes through the channel or indirect sales. But it's projected to reduce to 33% at the end of the decade, with the rest being split between direct sales forces, which accounted for that other 33% today, and marketplace growth. And we're seeing that marketplace growth taking some of our dollars, even with the great partners we have, the nerdios that are helping with, with Azure, and the PAX 8s as an example, that are providing a much more involved process, helping the MSPs go there. But it's the same amount of dollars to share. And now it's being watered down to the MSP level, albeit you're trading off to get some skill sets you might not have. But the point in all this is, if you really look at that number, that means at the end of 10 years, while we're growing to 7 billion, because we're shrinking from 64 to 33% as the indirect channel, at the end of the day, we're getting the same 3.5 billion.
Yeah. No.
So the number's not changing.
Yeah.
And I'm sure inflation will, as we're recording this, you know, we're crossing over to almost $5, a gallon for gas, right? You know, we all know why, but that's fact in our life right now. But there's good news. And one of the things Jay did point out in that session was 90% of this is going to be partner assisted. So this is where the opportunity really lives for the next generation MSP. How do we get back those partner assisted dollars, which really equate back to consulting, advisory, and the soft skills that help drive these projects forward, right? So if I really sit back and look at that, it says to me there's a few things. Now, we're all seeing the explosion of security, but security's always been part of IT. It's never gone out of style. It's never really not been there. It's just now the tools are getting so advanced in detecting things faster. Of course, the threats are coming at us much quicker as well. That it's creating this large market. But here's the problem. It's getting more sophisticated at the customer level too. 10 years ago, I gave you endpoint security, right? Yeah, you ran some antivirus. Yeah. You got some malware. I threw malware bites on your machine because that's what we needed. We had a perimeter firewall. Maybe some of the bigger environments were putting network access controls where, if you logged your machine onto the system and you didn't have certain level of software, they would segregate you. But, I'm not putting this down as rudimentary stuff. That was some advanced stuff when we were doing it, but it's gotten so much more advanced now. How does a customer know what they need to implement, when they need to implement it, and what's compliant when you implement it as well? And this is really where I think there's a huge opportunity for soft dollars, right? First, security advisory. That's like a no-brainer. That's like in the DNA of MSPs today.
Yeah.
You're trying to sell your stack, but are you selling a governance program to go with it? And what I mean by a governance program, are you going out there as a security officer or assigning a security officer at the customer as well, and actually building policies and plans to govern them, not just from a, active network standpoint, but how are you protecting yourself against litigation in your own business? Do you got good acceptable use policy saying what people can do with the computers? Do you have access hours? Do you have regular controls to look at your users and make sure that they have the right permissions under there especially when they get changed in roles, right? Mm-hmm. There's that kind of stuff.
All right. So hold on a second, Brian.
Yeah.
So soft dollars, we're leaving a bunch of money on the table, right? Is what you're saying. We've focused so much on MRR that now we're giving away the house every time we're talking to our clients and not getting paid for it. And so one of your ideas here is security awareness. Is this a TAM type of conversation? Who is this?
So we talk a lot about the concept of the office of vCIO. It's not a single person, a single resource. And this, now we're kind of mixing conversations, but I think it's worth a minute or two on this one, right? Everybody looks for this holy grail, this vCIO person in their organization, somebody that understands a little bit about business, enough about technology to go be dangerous with the customer. Yeah. And we also want it for an MSP price. So we're basically chasing unicorns a lot of times, right? Yes. It's usually the business owner, and that's all that can do, really do that. If you go into the enterprise space, for those that don't know, I spent a little bit of time in the enterprise space at the end of my MSP career before launching vCIO Toolbox. And they had the concept of the office of CIO there. It was really program managers and project managers that took initiatives to the streets and then brought in the service teams they needed to support those initiatives going out the door. So when I look at the vCIO process, it naturally leads into having somebody in the vCIO role as a quarterback. Then you have an engineer who's supporting that quarterback by identifying what the different issues are from a technical standpoint, where the gaps in process system security and training, right? And from those gaps, helping the vCIO build a roadmap. Then you got to start looking at the vCISO being part of this. And if you don't have a vCISO in your organization, you should start thinking about it because your customer already thinks you're doing that for them, right? So, you've got to have somebody that understands a little bit about security policy, what is really required when it comes to compliance. What are some of the things that we don't know about compliance out there? Bet you didn't know if you really have to have certain compliance levels, you need to be on a special version of Office 365, not the standard stuff, in order to truly be compliant. These are things that a vCISO can bring to the table. And in the Office of vCIO model that we talk about a lot, you got to have an executive sponsor, somebody where the buck stops, somebody that can make decisions when they need to be made with the customer, that can have financial impact and empower that to happen without having to go to committee board or something like that. And that's really how you structure an advisory team to support the customer, the Office of vCIO. Now, the problem is we get a lot of that, as we've said before, away for free as part of the relationship. But we can take parts of that and really structure it and look at a customer and say, this is how we're going to do it going forward. So an example of this is compliance, right? Now, we already know there's a lot of companies that are bound by regulatory compliance because of the industries they're in. If you want to do work with the DoD, you have to do either NIST or CMMC as an example and follow those cyber frameworks. If you're in healthcare, you got to follow the HIPAA guidelines. If you're in manufacturing, oftentimes you're following ISO 27001 and so forth. And while there's a lot of different regulations out there, somebody has to quarterback that and help understand what that really means and then assess it regularly. We love to go, hey, we're doing some of this stuff and this is how we adhere to compliance based on our regular reports, but we're not doing it in an ongoing process. Well, that's a lot of time. We don't have the cycles to do that. Then charge for it.
Yeah. So Brian, where is this? Okay, so yeah, I'm an MSP. I'm going out there. I'm listening to you, and I want to try and implement this office, the vCIO office. How do I? Are you telling me that all contracts moving forward are you're adding revenue to to the
Nope.
contracts moving forward? Or are you doing QBRs to get people onto this, additional revenue program?
Yeah, is this kind of like doing a white space analysis, talking, or just kind of sitting back, seeing what clients are paying for the services that you have, and then kind of fit this in? Or
so let's really put a little line in the sand on that, right? The QBR is to help your customer really identify where the gaps are and help them propel forward, right? Yes, we're also sharing a little bit about our performance, but at the end of the day, what's the main reason we go out there as MSPs to engage with them? Our biggest risk is what we call the curse of the great MSP. The more we automate, the more we do remotely, the less things break and the less we're on site. And when we should be getting a high five, oftentimes is when we're getting shown the door, because the customer goes, hey, nothing breaks anymore. We never see these guys. Why are we paying $2,500, $10,000, right? So what we need to do is kind of take that narrative, and we're going to do our QBRs, talk about things to set the table that the customer might not be aware of. So I happen to be in the great state of Connecticut. I know you guys used to live here. Right now, that's one of 3 states that have basically said, and you guys may have heard us say this on the show before.
Yeah, you've mentioned
if you implement a cyber framework over the next couple of years and prove out those controls, you can't be held punitively held for damages. So this opens up the door for even companies that don't have compliance requirements directly to now be able to say, wow, I got to get a security program in play. And really, customers don't understand security. That's why we have security awareness tools now. You kind of hit that a little bit a few minutes ago, Rob. Those security awareness tools are to help your end users understand where there's gaps. But somebody's got to govern over that too. Hey, I sent out Rob and Tim an email today, and Rob, as always, did a really good job of watching that video and learning his information. And Tim did a really good job of ignoring that email and not doing anything, right? So who's going to stay on top of Tim to make sure that he stays compliant, right? And these are the things that need to have checks and balances. So when you really start looking at a security program now, it's somebody coming in to help fill the leadership void, but really fill the leadership void. I'm not talking about doing a quarterly business review every 4 quarters to engage with the customer, but starting to embed themselves into the customer's environment, to be a true leader that might attend some of their executive meetings and board meetings, to understand what changes are coming for the business and what moves they're looking to make, so we can make sure we're protected from a security standpoint. Not everything connects to a wire or wireless here. Some of it's a technology exit policy where we just need to know what we're going to do when people are walking out the door. An acceptable use policy that says that might be part of our handbook. It might not even be an explicit documentation or document that says to a guy, hey, Rob, when you're here at work and you're on our business machine, you can do business functions. We're not heathens here. You're allowed to check your personal email from time to time. You're allowed to check Facebook from time to time. But what we don't want you doing is going to any weapons, drugs, threats, anything like that. And if found to do that, we're found to go to any objectionable material that might make somebody else in your office uncomfortable, especially here in the day of PC, right? That we could be held liable for that as a company. So there's this whole policy set that needs to be addressed. And while HR might have some of that information, they don't know how to implement it. And that's where we got to come in and build the execution plan. It's the same thing with doing this compliance piece. It shouldn't be a once-a-year compliance event. Okay, here's my report. I made my compliance event. Well, how are we maintaining that we're still adhering to that compliance 3 months from now, 6 months from now? You can build a compliance as a service. And I see a lot of guys doing the right thing. They're starting to do cyber audits annually for their customers. But why do it annually? That's the same as when we used to do projects. Turn it into a recurring revenue thing that says, hey, we're going to build your foundational plan. And then every quarter, we're going to refresh it. So if we need to report on it, we've got the most accurate data at this point in time. So it's kind of, and now I can charge a monthly fee for this, right?
Yeah.
So it's really about getting creative and saying, look, I'm already adding, you hear guys out there saying about get $300 a seat. Well, the reason they're getting $300 a seat now is because they're adding $150 worth of security tools. Is there money that can be had for the leadership piece of this as well? And, when you say what's in a vCIO program, it's pretty straightforward. We help develop policy. We help pick the tools and the architecture and define the metrics that are going to be measured. And then we ensure we're being compliant to those metrics, even if we don't have to report out to somebody else. But we're really making sure that we have good cyber hygiene across the organization to do our best at mitigating risk. without breaking the bank, right?
Yeah.
And that's just one example. We're getting a little long in our time today, but other examples of where we can interface. I recently had Bill Stucklin, who's been on our show as a guest, to talk to the vCIO toolbox community about automation. MSPs are champions at building automation in their own offices. They want everything to be integrated. Doesn't matter if the data is getting put into the same spot or the same data is getting put in 4 spots. They want it in those 4 spots because different people need it. They know how to automate their ticket flow, their response flow, stay engaged, get alerts so people can escalate, all those great things. Why aren't you taking that to the streets and working with your customers to do the same thing? You don't think they got the same problems in whatever they deliver? So what are you doing to get inside automation? Well, that's a whole other consultancy that you can build and make buku dollars. And if you don't think you can do it, look how many Salesforce resellers are out there. Salesforce is this beautiful piece of software that can do a million different things, but somebody's got to know how to make all those triggers work. So they bring on consultants and spend hundreds, if not millions of dollars in these organizations just to make Salesforce do what they want it to do. And at the end of the day, what does Salesforce do? It keeps track of your deals, right? So, you think about it, there's so much more that they want to build off of it. So automation is a huge opportunity. Advisory is a huge opportunity. Analytics are never going away. And if you can get into, look at your customers who are managing deeper, more disparate pieces of data, maybe there's a big data play for you, or at least a medium data play with some of the customers we deal with. The point is, look around you. There's a ton of consulting dollars, and a lot of those dollars, you already have the resources in house. You just got to look at how to assemble them and engage them. And there's new money on the horizon. Because if you go back to Jay's numbers I put at the top of this call, 7 billion is going to go through IT in 10 years versus 3.5 billion today. But it's going to be split 3 ways instead of 2 ways. And we're getting the lion's share of the 2 ways. But yet there's going to be 90% that's partner assisted. Everything I'm talking about today is the partner assisted. It's us guiding the customer to buy the security tool, to get that new piece of software, to implement this automation. If we can do that and build it into a monthly project, it's a win-win, right? We're getting a new as a service label in there. We're staying sticky with our customers. We're answering holes that exist today. How many of you have had your customer hire a consultant who starts questioning you? Why are you not in that gap? The only reason they were hired is because they didn't think you could do this, this XYZ advisory. But once that guy gets under the covers, his job's probably, or her job is to figure out how to cut costs too. So, stake your claim and take as much of it as you can. It's a gold rush, baby.
Yeah. That's too funny how, Rob and I got out of the MSP space in 2013. Or end of 13, beginning of 14, right in there. It's funny how, the things that you're talking about here, we were just trying to get servers on site and do wireless projects, right? And we were extremely proactive at the MSP that we used to be at. But when you talk about these things, it kind of continues to amaze me. The opportunity that's available within this space.
It's time to think outside the box, just like we did when managed services first came out. We wanted to figure out how to monitor everything, right? If a toaster could be monitored, we were thinking about it back then because every endpoint brought more dollars, right? When remote backup came out, it started with servers. And then it immediately was like, can we get desktops back, when desktop imaging was a much more difficult animal to do, right? Virtualization came out. It started at the servers, went down to the desktops. Now it's in the cloud. Like, we always adapt and see how to maximize. Now it's time to look at and kind of say, how do we take back some of the control, stop giving away the farm, and make some more money? And all this while creating a win-win scenario with your customer. Because trust me, this is money they're going to be happy to spend. If they hire a chief information security officer because you didn't give them a fractional job, which could cost $40,000 or $50,000, they're going to spend $120,000 to $200,000 for that role.
Then the lawyers and everything else getting involved with all
the lawyers are always there, Rob. As soon as you make these policies,
well, the more they spend with you is less that they spend with that lawyer, right?
No doubt. But there's always lawyers.
Yeah. Yeah,
All right.
All right.
All right,
so,
fellas.
okay.
So that was a good one, man. I always like trying to figure out ways for clients to like earn more reoccurring revenue and, get more sticky with the clients and, be able to help the clients, right? I love these types of conversations. For anyone who is looking to get in touch with Brian to find out more about this topic, we'll be, including his LinkedIn profile and into this podcast as well.
I think it's always there.
Is it always there, Brian?
Yeah. We'll put it twice. We'll put it twice.
That's right.
What we will put a link into is vCIO Toolbox did just publish a new program guide on how to create your own vCISO program, what it requires and what the deliverables are. So, we'll put a link in there. So if you want to download a copy, go for it.
All right.
Cool.
Very good.
Very cool.
Always nice to get some free information. All right, fellas, that's it. Any closing thoughts before we break away?
I'm just waiting for you to finally say one of these wasn't very good. Rob always goes, this was a good one, man.
That was a good one. Yeah,
okay, I'll start grading them. All right, at a score of 1 to 5, this was a 1. Now, which is better, 1 or 5? I'm not going to say.
Whatever you think.
All right, fellas, take care and see you next time.
All right, thanks.